The Guide Dogs Redbridge Centre building is shown, surrounded by grassy outdoor space with trees in the background. The sign at the entrance reads, Guide Dogs Regional Centre Southeast. Jean Hewitt, Inclusive Environments at Buro Happold.
So Guide Dogs UK have been a client for about 6 years now. Most of the projects have been existing buildings, and we've had great joy in seeing some of the dogs around the place and helping them to refurbish and make those places more accessible. We've been coming to this area for a while, looking at the existing building and in conversation with them, but to see a new build project like this come out is really super exciting. And the dog facilities here are extraordinarily good. So for me, this is probably the first project I've ever done that's about designing for dogs rather than people.
Guide dogs run across a training room with staff nearby, with dog toys scattered around the room. Dogs are shown playing in a covered balcony space. Anna Hoskins, Head of Workplace Projects, Guide Dogs.
We're within the green belt, so that brings its challenges. Part of the planning was the BREEAM Excellent that we needed to achieve. Partly because of the green belt, but it was also something within our existing kind of sustainability and property strategy that we wanted to try and embed. At the external space, we had to make sure we had significant planting, as well as areas, we've got lots of outside space which we need for the dogs, but we had to have certain numbers of trees, particular areas of planting. So that's been very sympathetically done in line with that, but all the time making sure that we are embedded within the environment. It sits very well in the local landscape, nicely surrounded by green spaces. So again, from that kind of PAS and accessibility side is great, with lots of added benefits obviously for dogs and training and people to come and visit and those sorts of things.
Guide dogs play with equipment in a grassy area with a staff member. Anthony Bushell, Programme Lead, Guide Dogs.
We already had a site in the Greenbelt, but it meant we had a lot of the external spaces that our dogs kind of thrive in. So we've got lots of space for our dogs to exercise and run, and areas for training around the site outside. And what it gave us an opportunity to do was to link these kind of the features up with routes around the site, which make part of the training, and kind of subtly build them into some of the areas. So for instance, you'll see out in the car park, you'll see crossing points, sort of dummy crossing points, like traffic light crossing points, which are there for the dogs and the trainers to kind of practice those areas as part of their training, kind of naturally here on site. Our fosterers can come in the morning and drop their dogs off as if they're dropping their children off at school. They can drop them straight into the runs, and then they come into their dog care rooms where they can be set up for the day.
A guide dog walks over and sits on a mat in a training room. John Parker, Architect, Kay Elliott Architects.
The main purpose of this building is to train dogs, and so we very early doors engaged with guide dogs to understand how they train the dogs. And to learn that so that we could then implement that into the design. Guide dogs also provide many different services within the building, so we had to layer those different users within the building, so it's understanding how we intermesh those. And then finally, we sort of, from the beginning right through the design process, and even whilst we were constructing the building, we engaged with the stakeholders that were identified by guide dogs and ourselves, and sort of really checking back with those each time and ensuring we're on the right track.
A woman plays with a guide dog in the training room. Michelle Miller, guide dog trainer, Guide Dogs.
So we've got a fab facility here now, which is one of our training rooms, but it's actually a really big room and it can be split into 3 rooms. So that alone is brilliant. It means we've got potential for 3 training rooms if trainers are using them. Obviously before you'd only have the one and then you couldn't use it with your dogs, so that is great. But equally, because it's got the partitions, you can open it up so you can have a really big room if you need that for any reason. That's great for like playtime with our dogs. They can just have an absolute blast. We've got a lift now, which might seem a bit silly to say to some people, but actually for dog training, that is amazing. And also downstairs, we've got like a sort of a cafe type area for the staff to obviously have their lunch and that, but that is great for us to utilise to help with social testing with the dogs.
The approach to the Guide Dogs building entrance is shown along a road surrounded by grass. The building's exterior is made of light brown materials such as brick and wood. John Parker.
The very nature that it is a building in the Greenbelt meant that we had to achieve BREEAM Excellent, and there was a challenge to all those sort of things, and it has led to a very simple sculptural building in its setting with a beautiful landscape around it. But we think that the sort of key design features are actually very subtle, and they're internally. So for example, the acoustics, is trying to manage those within the dog spaces, separate spaces that aren't dog related, so there's a bit of separation. And then even within the dog spaces, we've aimed to reduce the reverberation time down. We've controlled the daylight and introduced daylight to the centre of the building because of the plan's quite deep. Some of the rooms are quite deep because of the uses. So down the central corridor, we've got daylight coming through. In terms of navigation, we've very successfully, I believe, managed to create a clear and concise building layout, so anybody that comes to this building can know where they go. So as soon as you enter the building, in fact, even as soon as you enter the site, you're led up the path to the building, and then when you're in the building, it's very clear where you go. And so it's brilliant for users of all abilities.
Alex's guide dog, River, reaches its nose up to meet Alex's hand as he speaks to a staff member in a communal area. Alex Pepper, Head of Accessibility, Guide Dogs.
We have introduced our own standard for signage, not just on our doors for meeting rooms, but on our desks themselves, which include contrasting large print, but also includes Braille for those who read Braille. We have our own standard for wayfinding, very simply, high contrast in terms of texture, but also colouring to make sure people with low vision and no vision can navigate the environment safely. And also we have introduced, and we're trialling for the first time at Guide Dogs, NaviLens technology in our outside space. It's a great space for me personally, as someone with lived experience of vision impairment and as a guide dog owner to my guide dog here, River, because not only can I get here and be safe, I can actually be completely free to get around the building independently, which is something that's so essential, not just for staff, but for volunteers, service users, members of the public who are visiting, whether they have a vision impairment or another lived experience.
Anna, Jean, John and another colleague are in a showering area looking at the facility. Ben Shannon, Head of Inclusive Environments, Buro Happold.
One of the questions we're asked quite a lot is, how does working with an inclusive design team really bring value to a project? And for me, I think it's important we think about value in a number of different ways. So of course there's financial value, and we would always argue strongly that actually working with inclusive design specialists certainly adds that. We know that, for example, when you make more inclusive places, more accessible places, you're able to employ a wider range of people, retain staff better, and ultimately sort of everyone in your team benefits, including visitors too. So actually there's a really strong financial case for creating more inclusive places. But of course, I think it's also vital that we don't overlook what we call social value, the fact that actually we are genuinely enhancing people's quality of lives. And when you come to a building like this, it's so obvious to see that the direct impact that inclusive and more accessible design has on people's quality of lives. So for me, it's about thinking about value in a variety of ways.
Jean and Guide Dogs staff make their way through the car park and look inside a Guide Dogs transit vehicle. Jean Hewitt.
I've loved the fact that what I've seen on this project is not only have we been looking at accessibility and inclusion, but also that intersectionality of the whole population, including the dogs, but also looking at the wider implications of what we have to design for now, such as the biodiversity net gain. It's a BREEAM building. We've had to look at sustainability. So we always go beyond building regulations and look to design to best practice for accessibility and inclusion. So we've looked at the British Standards Codes of Practice, the BS 8300, but we've also pulled in things like the PAS standard on neurodiversity, designing for menopause and so on, to try and give our client the best opportunity to future-proof this building for the longer term. This building's going to be around for a long time.
A full view of the building is shown as the scene turns from day to night. Indoor lights shine out of the windows and outdoor lighting illuminates the approach to the building's entrances. A final black screen is shown with the Guide Dogs, Buro Happold and Kay Elliott logos shown in white. The screen then shows the logos of the following companies: Curtains, BD, MDA Consulting, OFR, Mac Group, Box 20 and SCS. A black screen then shows the Buro Happold logo written in white with green lines above and below the logo text. www.burohappold.com is shown below.